And welcome back, fourth and long fans. It's your footy correspondent, Coach Donnie Hess here. And ladies and gentlemen, it's time. It's that time of the year. The AFLW Grand Final is on the horizon. It is here. Let's talk finals. Let's talk women's footy. And I have put together a nice little panel here to chat over the finals and preview our lovely grand final. A great first addition to the podcast, Miss Allie Collette from Melbourne. Allie, how are you doing, young lady?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And those of you that are watching the YouTube channel, you know this gentleman quite well. Quite the great addition to the podcast, the media manager of the USAFL, coming to us from the great city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Mr. Brian Barish. Brian, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Donnie. Yes, Philadelphia, where the cheesesteak hits the road and where if you're not popular, cheesesteak hits you.
Absolutely love it. I think that is a great way to start our episode. Now, since the last time we came on, the finals have come, they have gone, 4 games have done. We have our 2 grand finalists. So let's really quickly go through the 4 games that have got us to our 2 grand final winners. We'll start off in the qualifying finals that were, shall we say, severely disturbed by COVID this year. So we'll go with the first one that was played 3 weeks ago, and that was North Melbourne taking on the Freo Dockers. Freo's Dockers getting a big 38-point win down at Arden Street. And I got to ask both of you, we'll start with Allie. Is this result a surprise that Freo had played so well after kind of a lackluster little section there before the finals, or was this kind of a result that you kind of saw coming?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because first quarter it was like, okay, North are doing well. They'll keep their fortress alive at Arden Street. But then look at the stats at quarter time. Kiara Bowers had, I believe it was 1 tackle to her name. That was it. And then she got into the game, and then Freo got into the game and ran over the top of North. Yeah, I guess you've got to remember from the back end of Freo's season, particularly that round 9 clash, they were severely under strength. They were missing both Antonios, O'Driscoll, I believe, and I think several others due to COVID. So I wouldn't read too much into that in terms of their form in the finals. But yeah, overall, I'm not 100% surprised that Freo did it as well as they did.
Yeah, they weren't a fifth place team. I mean, they're the last 2 weeks of the season. I don't think were indicative of their form, and because of that game against Melbourne, where as you said, Allie, they were essentially missing at least half their team. It cost them percentage. Now, if that doesn't happen and it's a closer game, maybe they're playing at home and they're not traveling to Arden Street to play this match. But I think they've been the class team, and obviously now we know that they won't be playing in the grand final, but they were, I think, a much more consistent team than North were, and you saw them turn it on really in the third and into the fourth, where they outkicked North 6-1, and their players like Kira Bowers, like O'Sullivan and Cuthbertson, they really got into it, and Roxy Rue kicking a goal and Hyde kicking a couple. So I don't think it was much of a surprise, and I think that they could have. I think just about any team in that that played in that quarterfinal round. I refuse to call it the qualifying final. It's a quarterfinal. Let's call it what it was. Sorry, Australia. But I think any other team they would have played, I think they would have been better than. I think even a Collingwood team, who we'll talk about in a moment. But I mean, they were the second or third best team throughout, even though the record didn't sound it. And unfortunately, those last 2 games kind of skewed things a bit.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that they really took a hit and kind of dove down. They were definitely better than their overall final record. And then kind of a great transition there, Brian. We go to the other quarterfinal, as you so greatly say it, and I will agree with you on that. And that's Brisbane Lions. I mean, rather easily taking down Collingwood. And I have to be honest, this did not shock me. And I don't fully put this on COVID as the reason Collingwood did not play as well. I think Brisbane was just absolutely humming at this time, and they've been playing really good footy. This was just overall, the Lions were just a better team on the day. Now, did COVID affect the score? I think a little bit, but for it to be this lopsided, it didn't really shock me at all.
No, I think that Collingwood backed their way into this into the finals. The Bulldogs really, and I think even if the Bulldogs had made it in, I would have said, the Bulldogs really kind of clawed their way into position to make the grand final. And the same thing with the Suns, even though they were eliminated by the time that they played in their final round match. But, Collingwood, I think, was not, it was on a completely, I think, lower plane. And it doesn't have anything to do with the talent. I think, when you talk about all the players that they were missing, especially, missing Bree Davy for basically the entire season, I think it was noble of them to be able to make it into the grand final. But, Brisbane has a lot of talent, and we've talked about it in the past. Jess Wardlaw, who, by the way, has a game named after her. If you ever want to play a Wordle like AFLW game, shout out to Jessica Ross for putting that together. But Brisbane is so deep in talent, and as it turns out, they had the best and fairest winner in Emily Bates at the end of it, which we'll talk about in a bit. But not a surprising result. And I think COVID had absolutely nothing to do with this. It's funny how we talk about AFL having a throwback to, community roots and everything else. This felt like back in the 70s and the 80s, when they would only play one final a week, back when there was only 4 teams in the grand final on the men's side. So that's very interesting. Allie, I'm interested to see what you have to say.
Yeah, my thoughts are very similar to what you've both said. Collingwood came out of the players that had COVID came out of ISO. I think from memory it was only the Wednesday beforehand, so I think that definitely played a part. But you've also got to remember that they were shocking all year when it came to travel. They traveled 3 or 4 times, did not win once. So and Brisbane. The reigning premiers for a reason. They're a talented side with a lot of depth, and yeah, it was not a surprise that it was a margin of that size.
Yeah, and it was one of those that you just look at it. I said it going into the finals. I said there's 3 teams that are going to play in the grand final. It's going to be it's either going to be the D's, Lions, or Crows. It's going to be one of those combination of the 3 in the grand final. So I had a hard time seeing this. And you do feel bad for this Collingwood team because they took so many big hits. You said Bree Davies earlier. Britt Benici goes down later with her knee injury. And it's just their depth got tested a lot this year. And they had some great performances. I mean, Ruby Schleicher has another great season. Chloe Malloy's kind of on and off again this year. Jamie Lambert has another great season. So there's no lack of depth of talent. It's just, I think they just ran into the buzzsaw that was the Brisbane Lions this year at just the absolute worst possible time. So we'll jump to our preliminary finals, which I've got to say this right off the bat. I'm going to ask this of you, Allie. How awesome was it to see that both of these preliminary finals were played at the Adelaide Oval and the MCG? Don't talk to me about the number of fans that came there. As disappointed as I am, I'm still happy that these ladies got to play in the biggest possible stadiums they possibly could for these 2 very important games.
Oh, it was absolutely amazing. And it's nice that the AFL have recognized this and recognized how big AFLW has become and given the reward, so to speak, of playing on such big grounds. And it was just, I was lucky enough to be at the G for the Melbourne Brisbane prelim, and it was just an amazing experience just to be there.
Yeah, and I think as a fan as well, and listen, there was a lot of negative chatter online about, well, have they earned it and all this other stuff. You think about the days where on the men's game where every team had their community ground, but once you got to the finals, every game was played at the MCG. And, I mean, we're talking about the VFL, but, especially, the SANFL is the same way. Everybody played it at Football Park. Everybody played at the large stadiums as well in the Waffle. So, that carrot of being able to play on the big stage. And I don't care how many people went. I don't care what the ticket prices were. Everybody says, oh, well, you should charge them and you should do this. Or if there's, people even now, I still bristle when I say, oh, you got 53,000 people to come at Adelaide Oval. Oh, well, how much was admission? It's irrelevant. If there's an interest in the game, people are going to show up. Just because you give away something for free. I mean, I could dig up old copies of that ET game from 1982 that got buried in the desert and give them away for free. And nobody, well, I mean, they're probably collector's items. That's probably a terrible example, but you get my drift. But that's the thing. I think the fact that, that they're recognizing the fact that the league has grown in stature, and it's great to see them get to play. I don't care how many people are in the stands to watch them. It's a carrot.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think the best part is it showed that these girls can play. It is a little bit of a different game. That's why I argue with some of the people that I get upset sometimes when I see people online. It's like, it's lower quality football. I'm like, it's a completely different game. I mean, there's rule changes that are different. Like, I'll say this out loud. I think the lasso rule should be put in the men's. I think it should. I think it would clarify so many of these deliberate out of bounds plays if they did. Like, I would love to see it instigated there. In fact, what I would honestly I'd even love to see the men go to 16 aside instead of 18. They complain so much about all the congestion. Personally, I'd love to see him go 16. Now, this is a women's podcast, not a men's podcast, so we will revert back to it. We'll go to it. Let's jump over to the Adelaide Oval, where we see the first of the two as Adelaide take down the Fremantle Dockers 40-26, a 14-point win. And to looking at this final score, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I really thought Adelaide really controlled this game a little bit more than the final score. I mean, am I jumping off too high a limb here?
Go ahead, Allie.
No, I wouldn't. Freo had their moments, but overall, I felt that, Adelaide were more in control for the vast majority of the game.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I think Adelaide really just showed their class in this game, and as good as Fremantle has been, I mean, you felt that, and I think the margin, I think, surprised me. I think if you would have asked me, I would have said that this game is going to be decided by less than a goal. And the fact that they kicked away and they held them scoreless did Adelaide kept Freo scoreless in the third term, I think was pretty surprising. And I think once you saw that, I think you kind of realized, this is a Crows team on a mission. And Ash Woodland with 2 goals, Stevie Lee Thompson and Ponter and Flip being Flip. It's Adelaide is really kind of showing that they're not that they've definitely been the most consistent team. I would say Brisbane is probably a close second. But really they put them to the screws in the final 40 minutes and ran away with it at the end.
Yeah, it was definitely a fun one. And then let's go back over to the MCG, where it's hard to argue this was not the best game of the finals so far, as the Melbourne Demons get the big win at the MCG by 33-29. And Allie, you got to tell me about this. I mean, how excited are you for your beloved D's to make a grand final and to kind of exercise demons? Because I heard a lot of pundits tipping the Lions in this one.
Where do I begin, honestly? I'm so excited, honestly. It feels like it's been a long time coming for the D's, because if you even go back to say 2018, that last game against the Bulldogs, one kick, it was all the difference. And then the conferences, don't get me started on conferences. And that teams that had a worse record going into finals over sides like the D's. And then last year, that prelim that I would rather never watch again. So the really good thing from a Melbourne perspective was Brisbane did not let up. They tested Melbourne all afternoon, and when I believe it was Greta Bodie that kicked that last goal, it still felt like they could have run over the top of Melbourne, even though it was still 36 seconds left and you didn't know what was going to happen. So kudos to Brisbane. They're a talented side. They're the reigning premiers for a reason. But yeah, I think that kind of win that Melbourne did get will serve them well heading into this weekend.
Yeah, and that I don't know that they've probably their toughest test. I mean, I know that they in terms of some of the other games that they've played this season, but this is the type of game that Brisbane wins. I mean, they had absolutely no fear in the grand final when they went to Adelaide Oval last year and they beat the Crows. This was nothing. It doesn't matter who they were playing, where they were playing. They can go on the road and they will beat you, and they will have absolutely no fear. And I don't think you would have been wrong to not tip them, especially after they had dismantled Collingwood the week before. A team they were expected to do so, but I think it really kind of shows, as well as Brisbane, but it really kind of shows that now heading into this grand final, that Melbourne is pretty battle tested, and they're going to get a pretty strong test from this Adelaide club. And of course, we'll go into that in a moment, but like Ali said, this is a fan base, and tie in the men's team as well. This is a fan base that has been really put through the ringer the last couple of years leading up to the men's season, and feeling pretty damn good about themselves, I'm sure, because now they're just coming off the backs of that men's premiership, and here is a women's team that has always been, since season one, in that upper echelon, in that elite group, and not even just in that group that consistently performs well, but also has that talent and does that. And they've got a couple of key additions, and we'll talk about one in particular, but it is not surprising that they took everything that this fearless Lions team had and managed to still win the game.
And there was another factor I just remembered: the 3 weeks off. That was a big question about how that was going to affect the sides, because it's unprecedented. You don't get 3 weeks off in any final series, unless it's a really random series I've never heard of. But yeah, it's just so unprecedented. And the fact that it was both Adelaide and Melbourne that won the prelims shows that 3 weeks off is just a number, really.
And I've seen, and we see in different situations and in different leagues. I mean, I'm a fan of Major League Soccer, and there was a team that had about the same time, because of buys and because of the way the schedule shook out, they had 3.5 weeks off, and they looked absolutely flat when it came to an actual one-off game. We've seen the same thing. We talk about it even in the men's game. Even that extra week, that bye week, heading into the grand final, or heading into the preliminary and the qualifying finals, and thinking about, if you're playing in a qualifying final and you win, you're essentially only playing once in 4 weeks. So there is that little bit of drawback. Yeah, you are resting people, but how do you prepare? How do you stay fresh and then go against a team that, mind you, they had a week off as well, but they had just come back from playing a week. So they have the momentum. They have a lot of that coming into this match. So the fact, maybe if they don't get that extra week off, if the Demons don't get that extra week off, maybe they win by a little bit more. Who knows? But the fact that they did have that, they didn't have any sort of rust on them. They met the challenge and they won the game. And I think that kind of shows the kind of talent that they had.
You're stealing my thunder, Brian. I was about to say all of those things, and you literally reeled off each and every one. I was going to say
That's why I'm here.
it's like I've seen professional teams where if you get a bye week and then they come back flat against a team that's played really well, and then the men's season, we've seen it in preliminary finals where the team that finishes in the top two gets a bye week and then they struggle. So I've seen that happen. So it was really good to see both of those top teams kind of show their class, which I think is really, really good. And I'm gonna say it as much as Brisbane being in the grand final, I think this is probably the most star-studded, awesome grand final we've had that we could have gotten, because you've got these storylines, and we'll discuss this a little bit later because I'm really interested to see how both of you think of. There's already discussions of storylines on both sides that I'm very fascinated with. But before we get to that, that's our final part. We have the luxury of the AFLW awards just recently happened, and we have the luxury of Ali got to go. So I gotta ask, how awesome were the AFLW awards? How awesome was all of the celebrations? And we got to talk about it. We got to talk about the shoey incident because it is blowing up.
Yes, it was such a fascinating experience. So I was lucky enough to go to cover it through my work, and it was fascinating to see the other side of it, like what it's like to be there, because you get one image while watching it on TV, but then there's all these other, mainly because of the TV coverage, things that you just don't see when you're watching it from home. So it was a fascinating experience. I personally felt a bit out of place because fancy events is just not the world I'm used to. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a fascinating evening.
I've been to the Crown too. It was at the Crown, right? Is that where it was, or was it somewhere else? I was at the Crown for the gala at the International Cup, and it's fancy. It really, really is. Now, mind you, it was a bit different than the one that you were at the other night, but it really, to kind of see everybody kind of get together and getting, just looking at the votes, and Ali, I think you can kind of speak to this a little bit more, is interesting to see how a lot of these players at the top and how close it was at the end, Hatchard and Marinoff and all these other players. What's interesting to me is, somebody saying, you look at Melbourne, they didn't have anybody in the top 12, but you look at Adelaide, and they had two players. They had Hatchard finishing second, they had Marinoff finishing third, but everybody was saying, Melbourne has so many just solidly good players up and down the park that's why they get as far as they do, because they don't rely on one or two players, especially in these vote heavy positions, in the midfield and sort of in the half forward and half back. So I'm interested to kind of get your reaction to that, and the fact that, again, that Melbourne, that these players really weren't in the mix, when some of these other teams, they had one or two players that constantly kept getting votes. And some of them, Tilly Lucas-Rod finished tied for 10th. St. Kilda finished towards the bottom. Mon Conti from Richmond, Ellie Blackburn. These are players that do a lot, and yet Melbourne gets as far as they do, but yet they spread the love.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I would have said, because with Adelaide, you've got your Marinoff, your Hatchards, your Phillips, but with Melbourne, I want to say they're more well-rounded, because you've got players like your Paxies, your Tyler Hanks, your Lily Mithens, that are going to steal votes off each other, but they're all so talented enough that they work together well to ensure Melbourne goes as far as it does, as often as it does.
Well, and I'll throw this in too. If I'm remembering the count, there's two things I'm going to say at this is with Melbourne, it seemed like whenever they got 3 votes, it was always a different player. It was never the same player multiple weeks. Kate Hoare, I think, got 3. Lily Mithen got 3 one time. Paxman got 3 one time. Lauren Pierce, I think, even got a 3 in one of the games that they played. So it seemed like when Melbourne did win, it was never the same player over and over and over, kind of like you saw with Adelaide. It was always Hatchard and Marinoff are usually one of the top two each and every time they played. I think Woodward got one game where I think she was a 2, and I think that was the highest after that. So, but another thing that I found fascinating, and I almost wish the men's, and again, I hate doing this, but I'm going to say this, I almost wish the men's umpires would do this, as I started seeing full forwards. I mean, Woodward getting 2 votes. Taylor Harris, I think, got a 3 in one of the games. Katie Brennan got 3 in one of the games. That doesn't happen in the men's. I mean, you could kick 10. I mean, Josh Bruce kicks 10 in the Western Bulldogs game, and I think he got 1 vote in that game. So it just, like, I almost kind of want to say, it's like, I have to give kudos a little bit to the women's umpires, because they didn't just go for the simple, the highest disposal person and most impactful midfielder is the one that gets 3 votes. So I have to give them a little bit of kudos. So the count was much more, I think, spread out. Like, it wasn't so simple. Like Mon Conti was probably one of the best ones for Richmond, but even she had a couple of games where she had other people. And then, as you said, Brian, Tilly Lucas Rod getting a ton of votes in a few games where she got 3 votes when they lost. So I got to give the umpires that they're really going off of the most impactful player on the ground. So I got to give them a little bit of a hat tip on that one, because that count was fun, because it wasn't just your simple, easy, okay, I know that the team that wins is going to get the person with 3. That happened 2 or 3 times that the team that actually lost even got the 3 votes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, and I'd like to see, like you said, I mean, everybody says, oh, it's a midfielder's award. But yeah, I mean, it really shouldn't be. It's whoever is the best. And yeah, I mean, the umpires are going to see that. And listen, you see that in the US AFL as well. We have a similar situation at nationals where we've got, a 3-2-1 system. And yeah, a lot of times, you might see a player dominating on the offensive side, and they might get 1 vote. Whereas it's the player that gets, your 30 touches a game or whatnot that gets it. So yeah, I'm with you. It's good to see them spread the love a bit. And on the shoey, really quickly, speaking of nationals, that was Sunday afternoon at nationals for them, because that all sorts of shoeys are done at the USAFL nationals. And as I was saying before we went on air, it kills me as the MC, because it just kind of wastes time. Like, come on, we got 30 awards to give out. Come on now. Now everybody's going to want to do it this year.
but I gotta say, there's one other topic I want to bring up really quickly, going off the AFLW awards, and that is the All-Australian. And I'm gonna say this, and I said it earlier in my podcast earlier in the year. Thank you for getting Christy Lamb into that All-Australian bench, because as I was listening to it and they got through all the starters and Christy Lamb wasn't there, I'm like, if Christy Lamb doesn't make it, that is a travesty, because she was absolutely incredible for the Western Bulldogs. So to see her get an All-Australian nod, thank you, selectors, because you really, really made me a very happy guy, because she was one of those I really wanted to see her get an All-Australian nod. So I'm going to say it to both of you. Was there a player that you think might have got snubbed, and who's your biggest surprise that made your All-Australian roster? I think Allie's muted.
She is.
There we go.
I was going to say, my biggest snub is definitely Cora Staunton. She was robbed, but she was the victim of midfielders getting pushed into the forward line. Mm-hmm. Yes, Hayley Miller is a very, very, very talented footballer, but last time I checked, she was a midfielder. So if you're gonna do that, drop someone to the bench. Like don't put midfielders out of position just because they're good footballers. Like, yeah.
I can literally see the steam coming out of Donnie's ears, because this is a pet peeve of his on the men's game. He ranted at the same thing. It's not the best player at each position that they do this on. It's the 24 best players, and that is not the point of the All-Australian team. Some players are not utilities. Like, yeah, Do you want the 20? If you want the 24 best players, don't assign them positions. Just say these are the best players. If you're going to assign positions to them, make them the actual positions. Don't be picking people just because of votes. Again, it's that midfielder bias that we see. So yeah, put a full forward up there. Put a Cora Staunton. If Cora Staunton's the best forward, she needs to be on the Australian team. If it's somebody like Taylor Harris, she needs to be up in that forward line. It's insane to me like that they do it this way. And I'm fully with Donnie on this, but yeah, I'm with you. Cora should have definitely been on the team. She and I are the same age, and I can't do half of what she does. So it's amazing to me. So she needs to be recognized, I think.
I 100% agree. And I should find that episode and send it to you, Ali. I went on for 10 minutes, just absolutely livid. Because it's my biggest pet peeve. And I actually specifically last year for the men's in our grand final preview, I did my All-Australian, and I specifically did positions and I had a few people not happy with me because I left out some midfielders that made the All-Australian roster for the men that did not make mine because, as I said, I'm going to put 6 forwards on the field, not 3 forwards and 3 midfielders. It's going to be 6 forwards. So if your midfielder doesn't make it, well, boo-hoo, because they're a midfielder. I'm sorry. There's a ton of great midfielders. So I am 100% with you. I think Cora Staunton did get a massive snub on that one. She had an incredible season. Just watching her play is so inspiring to see what she does on it. And the crazy thing is that she's already a legend back in Ireland, but she's carving herself out a legendary career even at her experience level. I'll say it that way. I don't like saying old because there's no way she acts the way her age is. Just an incredible player. And I'm crossing my fingers, hoping that the Irish players will still be able to come back and play next year with the adjusted schedule, because her, Brid Stack, and some of these amazing Irish players, I don't want to lose them because they have been incredibly great additions to the AFLW, and it is another one of those. This August timeline does really affect them even more than it affects the girls here, because they have to choose now. Do they come over, be professional and get paid, or do they stay and play as amateurs, but you still get the recognition that you do over in Ireland? So it's another one. We'll have to see how August comes.
I'm going to say what I'm going to say. 2 things really quickly, because I need to say this because Lord knows when we're going to get a chance to talk about AFLW again. One, players like Staunton, there's this thing. First of all, let's handle the August thing first. We see all of this press, and I'm willing to bet, and I don't care if I get in trouble for saying this, I feel like the networks and the AFL are really, really, really pushing this. How the new teams want it, how the shareholders want it, how the networks want it. What about the players? And it is obvious to me that several players have already come out and said, in response to some of these, let's not do it this year. And there are a many number of reasons. Go read the article that Peter Holden wrote out. I don't care what anybody says. The definitive article has all the reasons why they shouldn't be doing this. But they did the same thing last year. And, there was at least one player, I mean, it's clearly out there. You can look at it on Twitter. I won't name them, who had plans when they announced that they were moving the season up to December originally. She said, I had holiday plans in September. Nobody seemed to care about that. And I said, that sounds like, I actually replied to the player and said that this sounds like they didn't consult you. So I think what they're trying to do is try to get everybody hyped up on it so that when it comes to them finally presenting it. And I know there was a father of a current player who said that, I know, and again, it's all on Twitter, I'll let you find it, who says, I know of one player who needs a break. So there's that. Now that leads me into this, whereas, if there's that start in August, you are probably going to lose some of these Irish players who they're not just bit players. Cora Staunton, Aisling Sheridan, Sarah Rowe, Orla O'Dwyer, who is one of the reasons why the Lions have gone as deep as they have. All of these players you're going to lose. And when that article was put up, you had a couple of people who, just like 5 years ago, said, well, we don't care about Irish players. We need to focus on growing Australian talent, and we need to get them in the league. They deserve the chance. These foreigners don't. And it was the same thing when Danny Marshall and when Sarah Roner, when the two of them came over, and you had the same people saying it should be Australians that get first crack at it. But at what point do you cut that off? Because what will happen is, and mind you, I think the Irish players have a little bit more of the advantage because of the similarities between Gaelic football and footy. Mm-hmm. At what point do you say that? Because if this goes on, let's say you do that, let's say you say, okay, you have to be an Australian. In 15 years and 20 years, let's say, okay, let's start letting foreigners in. They'll be so far behind, it would be a rarity, like a Mason Cox, which, not going into it, but Mason Cox, I think, is an outlier. So this brings up all sorts of issues, and I think larger issues. So I know everybody has their opinions about it. I know everybody kind of shares me. If they want to do it that badly, they need to start it in December like they usually do. Let's start it in December of 22, do October next year. And then if you have such a hell bent on getting started in August start, do it in 2024. Don't do it next year. Give these women a chance to recover, give them a chance to prepare. If you're not going to pay them a living wage, if you're going to force them to have full-time jobs and you're going to string them along like this, I mean, what's going to happen is you're going to have lose players to injury. You're going to lose players to I'm spewing off on a rant here, and that wasn't the intention, but that's kind of how it is, and it kind of unfortunately kind of goes to show the state of the game. I'm done. I'm done with that.
To be completely honest, Brian, I did the same kind of rant a few weeks ago, and I said the same thing. I kind of had the slow transition, a year transition, where we would go maybe November or December this year, take the Christmas holiday, take a couple of weeks. Yes, you're going to have to do with the heat in January and February, but then the girls get more time and then be able to transition to do August in 2023. I 100% agree with that. Do I understand the arguments of the clean air argument, which I love how Peter Holden kind of eviscerates that a little bit, but it is kind of the cleanest air you're going to get, because the one thing that really would help this whole thing is never going to happen. And that's the men's season shortens to 17 games. So then every team plays every team once, and then you have the finals. Yep. Because there you go. There's 5 weeks gone from the regular season that you could plug into the women's season and make it even. They won't do that because that's more money, and there's more money in the men's than the women's. I don't agree with it. I hate that argument, but that's plain and simply the fact that we live in, unfortunately, is that the men's season, until you can get the players to agree to cut games, which they're not, because then they won't get as much money. That's kind of the argument there. So I 100% agree with you, Brian. I think they are just, I think they're trying to rush it. I know that there's also even some discussions of that AFLW and AFL are trying to find a way to kind of put themselves ahead of the Women's World Cup that should be in 2023 as well. I've heard that particular conspiracy theory, whether that has any merit or not, I don't know. All I know is I feel horrible for these ladies, because they are literally put between a rock and a hard place, because they want to play footy. They want to play this game that they love, and they're basically being told, you have to do this. And they're sitting here going, do I stay with my career, which for most of them, that's more of their focus than footy, or do I play football? That's the issue that Jess Wushner, unfortunately, we're going to miss her, because she's made that decision. And it riles me so much that you're going to lose players because of it. And that really frustrates me.
What's funny is I just happen to be looking I just happen to have Facebook, and there's an article from a site in Ireland saying that the manager of the Meath Gaelic side, there's a player named Vicky Wall who apparently is looking at playing in AFLW next year. And this one says, and the manager of the team says, I don't know why you'd want to play that sport, because it's dreadful stuff to watch. I can't understand it. There's no skill at all. Those are fighting words. I'll say this. I'll say this, and Ali, you can jump into, but just on your point, I am learning as somebody who spends hours and hours trying to build and trumpet this game in a foreign land where we are not even in the top 15 in terms of sports interest, and saying that we have women and then individuals, and we also have people in a team perspective that are trying their best to grow the sport here. And unless we have an international cup that is not well publicized, it's not well it's organized. I won't say it's not organized, because I think it's pretty well organized, but it's not well publicized. And it's almost at times it seems like a token effort. Now, you mentioned Wusha. In 2016, a year before AFLW, was a few months before AFLW launched, she had this article about the challenges and the questions about wanting to play professionally, but it only being a part-time endeavor. And I wrote a piece for what was then Girls Play Footy, and I said that if the AFL is going to invest time and energy into this, they need to have a vision, and they need to go at it 100%, and they cannot treat it as a token effort, because what will happen is you will have a situation like this where if the better players do not find this to be a skillful endeavor or a full-on endeavor of their time, their energy, they are going to leave. They are you mentioned Wushner, and mind you, there's a lot in her background, but you look at somebody like Sharni Norder, they are going to find, Tiarna Ernst is another example. They are going to do things either outside football or outside sport altogether, and the product and the quality is going to suffer. If you have a choice of playing part-time or playing full-time in, like, say, soccer or netball, and you have more opportunities, what are you going to choose? And what will happen is the quality will continue to suffer, attention will go down, and there's going to be a difficult choice that's either going to be to cut teams or to scrap it. And what will happen is that people will look at this with absolutely no context and say, see, we told you women's football was going to fail. Nobody cares about women's football. And it's not going to be the footballer's fault, and it's not going to be the interest of the sport. It's going to be the organization that lets you down. Ali, I'm interested to kind of get your opinion on this, because Donnie and I have been talking. I want to hear what you have to say.
Where do I begin? But just on your point about choice of sport, firstly, Ash Braz is the perfect example, because with the Comp Games coming up and with the court series that happened in Jan, she chose netball, and quite frankly, rightly so, because there are those international opportunities, and she is a member of the Diamonds. So why would you risk a bad injury that is going to affect your more profitable career line? Yeah, but back on the Irish girls, Sinead Goldrick is a perfect example of why if the Irish girls don't come back, I'm going to be devastated, because she is such a critical part of Melbourne's defence. And if you look at the LGFA's schedule, the All-Ireland Finals are the last weekend in July. If the AFLW starts, say, the first weekend in August, that's gonna leave a very hard choice for the likes of Goldie, Lauren McGee. And if Meath make the senior championship again, that's going to affect the likes of Vicky Wall, because which one do you choose? Like, I I believe I've heard that Sinead Goldrick is going to go back, but that's going to involve a lot of discussions between Melbourne and Dublin because there is essentially no gap. She and Lauren McGee have already missed a whole season of Gaelic football now, and to miss a fair chunk of the championship season, which from my understanding is like the next level up from the National Football League season, which is the one they've missed already. That's going to be a tough decision. So yeah, that is the sole reason I do not like the August start, because we're going to lose maybe even all the Irish players.
Yeah. And unfortunately it's, I agree with what Peter Holden said in one of the podcasts I listened to. Is it with the women's season, the way it is that you have to take one of 3 different poison pills, and none of them are really a perfect situation. It's do you take the poison pill of playing in the heat and playing in the middle of summer, but you're fighting against cricket, you're fighting against racing, you're fighting against everything else? Do you take the poison pill of playing at the same time as the men's, which I thoroughly detest, because I think if you think it's not given the coverage it is now, it's going to get even less if you're playing at the same time as the men's. Like, that is my honest opinion. I don't agree with it, but that's just, unfortunately, that's just the way I see it going. Is the media is going to focus on the men's season. The women's are going to become a redheaded stepchild, and it's basically going to stunt the growth of the league. Or you take a little bit of pain in this situation, and you risk losing some players now, hoping that maybe with this new CBA coming up that you can convince a way to get 12-month contracts, maybe get some more money invested, and maybe become professional. I don't know. There is no perfect example when it comes to playing conditions. No heat. August is perfect because you can probably get it done before Christmas, and it's still cooler. The only issue we run into there is that by the time you get to a grand final around December, then you've got the issue of the transition to cricket season. So big grounds like the MCG, SCG, Adelaide Oval, and Optus Stadium are off because they have to be transitioned for the Big Bash and for the cricket season and the Boxing Day test for Australia. So it's the one kind of pill that it frustrates me, because you want to see them in bigger stadiums. But if you start to play for better weather conditions, this is the potential after on effect that you're going to go through. So let's, as much as that topic, as much as that topic, fault. No. And, but I appreciate it, because it does show you, like, it's the one thing that I think she should smile about, is that she's got 2 allies that are Americans that are just as fired up as many of the journos that I've read over there. That it's frustrating, because we want what's best for these ladies and for this product. Because I'll be honest, this is the second full season that I have fully watched every game. I've done reviews and everything like that, and I have enjoyed every moment of it. In fact, I'll tell you this, I'm not sure if you've seen this, Allie. I am a foundation member of the Sydney Swans women's team. I have my certificate and everything. I cannot wait. I'm super excited for that, because I love this product so much. I had to do that. I had to be part of this. So he has it on his fridge and everything. Not on my fridge. It's actually not too far from me back here. I need to get it framed and get it up. I want to get it up on the wall somewhere here, but I don't want to mess with it too much. So it's on his fridge next to his report card. The fridge has got a few other things there. It's not going up on the fridge. The wife might argue with me on that one. So no, so love you. So let's go to it. The reason that we're here, grand final preview. And you know what? We have somebody that's got a team in it. So let's discuss it with you right now. Quick breakdown. And who do you think wins this game? Allie, your beloved D's are there versus the Crows. How do you see this going? Do your D's pull off the win, or we go with the Crows with that last dance type of finish to their season?
Where do I begin? I'm always going to back my D's girls in. They are definitely going to be the underdogs, but they will have learnt from last year, and they're better. As much as they've been such a consistent side. They're a much better side this year. Is a trend that I've noticed in the last couple of years at the D's is you get to about the midpoint of the season and they'll just suddenly have two random losses that come out of the blue a bit. But they didn't have that this year. They had one loss to Adelaide at Norwood, which, as much as it was annoying, was also kind of expected because Adelaide are such a good side. And if you think back to that prelim last year, there are so many players now at Melbourne that you just didn't have then. No Taylor Harris, no Olivia Purcell. Daisy was out injured. Sinead Goldrick was out injured. No Eliza West, who quite frankly has had one of the debut seasons to remember. So I said it on another podcast and I'll say it again here. D's by a goal, best on ground, Loz Pierce.
Awesome. What do you think, Brian?
This is one of those head versus heart situations. I think in my head, I think the Crows will win, but we've seen that again, that just because they're hosting doesn't mean that they are that they're unstoppable. Melbourne can win these types of games on the road. They went into Fremantle, and mind you, they beat Fremantle's B side, but they still won, and they still won going, 3/4 of the way across the country. To me, I think one of the biggest turnaround stories has to be Taylor Harris. I won't call it a comeback. Don't call it a comeback. I wasn't going to go in that direction, but I will. I wouldn't say she's a comeback player because I don't know that she's faced any sort of adversity. But at the beginning of the season, of course, there was the talk that she was demanding, a large salary by AFLW standards. And this is a woman who I don't think there's any question that she is a tremendous athlete. And you sort of have to take a step back, and we've all seen the picture of the kick, and we've all seen how, we've all seen that form, and we know that, love her or hate her or what have you, that she is iconic in a way that is helpful for the game, but perhaps not something that is always translated into wins and success, either personally or as a group. And it shows that I don't know what the situation was in Brisbane. I don't know what the situation was in Carlton. But here she is now towards the top of the goal kicker list. And I don't know if it's playing under, and it's not to say anything about Vesio or to say anything about the leadership in Brisbane, but now she's under the wings of Daisy Pearce and some of these, and people like Paxman and these people who've been around a long time in the game. Taylor Harris is still, even though she's been around a long, long time, she's younger than these players. And the system just being able maybe to have some of this weight off of her shoulders, I think it's an amazing, amazing turnaround. Now, they do have other players. They do have Lauren Pierce. They do have Paxman. They do have, and Daisy. Daisy's going to Daisy. But perhaps she may have been the one little extra key that might make them go. They're gone as far as they have. They're in the grand final. And somebody mentioned something very interesting today, and I think it was on the AFLW site. This is Taylor Harris's third grand final for her third different team, because she played in the inaugural one for Brisbane. She played in one in Carlton, and she's playing one here, and all three of them have been against the Adelaide Crows. Will third time be the charm for her? I would love to see Melbourne win. I don't know. You can question as to whether or not her winning is a feel-good story. It'll feel good for her, I'm sure, and perhaps silence a lot of people who say that she's not a very good football player, because I think she fit into the system very well. But I think Adelaide probably wins this game it will be single digits. I don't know that I'll say within a goal. I think we're probably looking at about an 8-point win. It will be a close game. It will be a close game going into the fourth quarter. I think Adelaide's going to have that little bit more of a kick, and I think they'll win.
I am 100% with you, Brian. I've stated it, and I had a friend of mine who I also chat with on Twitter that said the same thing when I asked her who she would tip. It's a head versus heart. My head says Adelaide because I just see the experience in grand finals. I see all of that, the kind of the rage of losing last year at home to the Brisbane Lions, which I think last year the same thing was kind of said, is that now Adelaide should win this, that they just got a better team than Brisbane, and Brisbane kind of caught them off guard. But there's a part of me that my heart is with the story of seeing Taylor Harris get that elusive flag, seeing Daisy Pierce get that elusive flag, and then the storyline that Melbourne media throws out is Daisy retiring, and I'm like, as I was talking with Ali before we had started recording, I said, the way she's playing footy right now, I don't think Daisy should retire. I think she's playing well, but I think she thinks about it if they win this one. That's my thought process. I think she thinks about it. I don't think she does. Even if they win, I don't think she does. I think she's enjoying her footy. She's playing well. She's in that nice little realm where I think you can't leave now. You got to go. But again, I've seen players go out on a high, and if they win this premiership, it will not shock me if Daisy does hang up the boots, but I don't want to see her do it because I think she's playing incredible footy. So I'm also with you. I think I'm going to tip the Crows, but it will not shock me if the D's win this one. And I agree, this is going to be a humdinger. I think this comes down late in the fourth quarter. I mean, who knows? I mean, I'll say it. I wouldn't even mind a goal after the siren. It may hurt the team that doesn't win, but it would be an incredible performance in game to watch if it does turn out that way. So that is going to do it for a fun episode. What's up, Brian?
Well, I have breaking news.
I was just about to say that because I think I know exactly what you're going to say. Let's see if Ali's seen this too.
Let's see if Ali has seen it. Well, if she's a part of this one chat we were a part of, Isabel Huntington has informed the Western Bulldogs of her wish to explore a move to the GWS
Giants.
I saw the notification come up, but I didn't look in until just now. Interesting.
Yep, the Western Bulldogs Twitter 10 minutes ago has that same with the story on it, and I was flipping through. And happened to see it. I was gonna mention it before we got off, and you beat me to it, Brian. But
that's why I'm here.
Which is really funny because yesterday we had breaking news in our men's review because right about the time we were about halfway through our review when Darcy Moore signed his contract, so we broke that news on the episode, which I thought was kind of funny. So, but that's an interesting little twist. Real quick, since you both are here, I mean, how crazy is that Izzy Huntington is out of honors and looking like she wants out of the kennel and wants to go up to GWS. I mean, this is kind of a coup for GWS here.
Definitely. Because, there's been rumors and talk about this for weeks, but nothing official until now. So, I reckon that's a massive coup for GWS because they're going to need someone to replace Orton eventually. As much as she is amazing at what she's doing at her age, she's not immortal. She's going to have to retire at some point. And Huntington, despite the injuries, is a perfect replacement and is someone that's still got a long career left in her. So that's a big win for GWS. They've just got to make it happen now.
Don't sleep on GWS because I think they've bubbled under the last few seasons. And I think you're right, Ali. If they get her, I think that I don't know that they automatically become a finals contender, but I think they need to be in the conversation. And we don't know who knows what's going to happen with especially if they decide to go the full Monty and do 8 teams like they have in the men's competition. But I mean, what a get that would be.
Well, but here's the one caveat to this. As great of a move as it is that if this season does go ahead in August, unfortunately, this move won't make an impact until 2023 because ACL tear, most likely a 12-month recovery, which means next season, I don't think you see her in the charcoal and orange. So it's a move that is not really, I kind of see this as not really made for next year, especially if they play in August. This isn't a move for next year. This is a move for 2 years from now when she should be fully healthy. The knee should be fully go, but even still, it's a great addition to the GWS Giants if they do. But now the question is, what subtractions will you maybe see when it comes to Sydney in New South Wales? Do you see an Alicia Eva or an Alice Parker potentially slip over to the Swan? So we'll have to see how that goes there. So we get some breaking news. Say that again.
Sorry, just on Alicia Eva, I've heard people suggest, speculate, whatever you want to call it, that she might be the next GWS coach. And because I believe there's a Vic Metro, some sort of pathway connection between Eva and Huntington, maybe that's played a part in Huntington picking GWS over anyone else.
Definitely a thought process there. So I think now that we've done our breaking news and we've talked it over, I think that is going to do it for our episode. A mighty thank you to both my panelists. Ali, thank you again for joining us all the way from Melbourne.
Thank you for having me.
And Brian, again, always great talking footy with you, sir. Always a pleasure.
Carn the mighty Philly Hawks. May they long reign.
That's such a great ending to this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another AFLW round review. Granny this weekend. Get out and watch that game. Keep an eye out. We have a grand final review show. I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, we will have a couple of very special guests next week. I'm still trying to get in contact with my contact down there. I'm hoping maybe to get an AFLW player on the panel for the grand final review, but that's still up in the air as we speak. Have a wonderful evening. We will see you again next week when we review the wonderful AFLW grand final.